So, hey there. My name is Brent Smith, and I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and welcome to the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Audio Podcast. Well, Super Bowl weekend's kind of gotten away from me, so I'm ran out of time. So instead of the video, which I could have done, I have just not been able to get organized enough, and so we're going to just gun through this audio podcast, and today we're going to be talking about two topics: Hong Kong to the coronavirus, not in our city, and Palestinians can't have peace. That's what we'll be discussing today on the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast.
You are listening to the Common Constitutionalist, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, free from the prying eyes of establishment black helicopters.
All right, I'm back. And again, I'd like to apologize for not doing the video podcast. I should have been more organized, but that's the way it goes. Even despite the fact that the Patriots aren't in the Super Bowl for once in a blue moon, it's still a hectic weekend for us football fans. So here we go. Hong Kong to the coronavirus, not in our city. So the Chinese government had a decision to make. With the coronavirus infecting probably around 10,000 people at this point so far worldwide, and the vast majority, about 9,800 of those 10,000, reside within China's borders. So they had to set up a quarantine zone. Makes sense? At least it does to me. But of course it had to be large enough to accommodate the ever-growing number of Chinese infected people, unfortunately. Luckily, China is a really large country. It encompasses about 3.7 million square miles, or roughly the same size as the old United States of America, which is kind of interesting because everybody thinks that China is this humongous, vast, whatever land, and it's the same could be said of the United States. I mean, we don't think of in terms of the United States being roughly the same size as China. We think of China as being much larger, at least most of us do anyway. Anywho, naturally, the communist Chinese government didn't pick some outlier city or something like that. They chose Hong Kong as the quarantine zone, one of the most heavily populated and congested cities in the entire world. Good choice. The government commandeered a huge high-rise complex that was just built in Hong Kong. But much to the surprise of the Communist Chinese Politburo, or whatever you want to call them, the residents of Hong Kong were none too happy. Son of a gun. In fact, they were so peeved that they went down to the high-rise complex and firebombed the newly constructed Fei Ming Estate housing complex, basically burning it to the ground. Talk about ungrateful. Here, Xi Jinping, president for life, worried sick about his people. No doubt. I don't say that in jest at all. Is just trying to do the right thing by his beloved citizens, because Xi Jinping is just that kind of dude. Now, if I were the altruistic leader of China, call me Xi Smith, I might instead choose another venue to house the sick and dying. Maybe I'd choose one of the more than 50 uninhabited ghost cities they have in China that dot the countryside. Oh, don't say it. You mean to tell me you're not aware of these empty metropoli? As an aside, one might say, oh beneficent leader Xi Smith. It's pronounced metropolises, not metropoli. Metropoli is, in fact, not an actual word. And to that, beneficent leader, Xi Smith, might retort, I'm president for life, and if I say it's metropoli, that's now the plural of metropolis. But thank you, concerned citizen, for your input. Now take this anarchist to the nearest re-education camp, and we don't want to hear from him again. Okay, seriously. China has this huge population, a majority of which, or at least tons of them, millions and millions of them, either can't find work or just barely eking out a living. And I'm talking eking out a living in Chinese terms, not eking out a living in dear old America. So the Chinese government, in order to prevent a revolt of Xi Jinping, decided to put many of them to work in the construction trade. So leader Xi Jinping has to do something to keep these people busy, so he ordered these massive cities to be built all over the country. And if you haven't seen these things, these suckers are a sight to behold. You can't believe it till you see them. They contain these extravagant monuments, these humongous spacious parks, really modern-looking buildings and interconnected roads that literally go everywhere. And from a distance, from afar, they all seem to indicate like a bustling metropolis. Huge high-rise apartment complex that could probably hold many, many thousands or more in each one of these buildings. And they look awesome, except for one thing. There's no frickin' people in the city. There's nobody. And that's why they've gotten the name Ghost Cities. I mean, it looks like they just finished the construction, and then someone just happened to discover that they built the city on top of a uranium deposit, and then they just had to abandon it, and nobody lives there. And like I said, there's a minimum of 50 of these ghost cities constructed throughout China. And it's not like they were abandoned or anything. They've never been populated. They're just ghost cities. They were just put up to give people something to do. And as long as the people have something to do and a place to go to work, they won't storm the palace gates, as it were. So the logical question one might ask is, why wouldn't Xi Jinping house the infected coronavirus people in one of these massive and empty cities? Makes perfect sense to me. That'd be a good question. Probably one that would get me sent packing one-way trip to an re-education camp. Guarantee it would. Why instead would you choose to put thousands upon thousands ever-growing every day infected and contagious coronavirus people in an already overpopulated city like Hong Kong, a congested city of 7.5 million people? That's how many people live in Hong Kong presently. And one, if you weren't thinking about it all, might think, oh, wow, that's a smart idea. I mean, what could possibly go wrong if you put a bunch of highly infectious and highly contagious people in a city of 7.5 million people in a pretty small area, Hong Kong? What could possibly go wrong? It's not like the virus could escape the quarantine zone or anything and spread over the entire city. I mean, let's get real. Really? So, I have a theory about that. You see, Hong Kong has been, shall we say, feuding with China almost since Hong Kong gained its independence from Great Britain back in, can't remember how long it's been, but it's been a damn long time. Hong Kong basically just wants to be left alone, like Taiwan, for example, just wants to be left alone. They want to be their own country. China be damned, for want of a better term. But no communist regime is going to put up with that kind of insolence, and Xi Jinping isn't going to either. Xi wants Hong Kong, and they don't want to become communist. So that's the impasse that they find themselves in. So the result is we end up seeing almost daily riots and things and tear gas and whatever, people being beat senseless, constant clashes between the freedom-loving Hong Kong residents who wave the American flag around more than the Americans do, and commies. That's basically what they got. So anywho, Ping knows that he could just wipe these people out in a day if he wanted to, but the world is watching everything that happens in Hong Kong. So, light bulb moment. Just introduce a highly contagious and deadly disease into the mix. Just keep it in the city and off the mainland and sit back. The coronavirus may actually just accomplish what force hasn't been able to do. Brilliant idea, Xi Jinping, if that's in fact your idea. But of course, one might say that's just insane. No leader, particularly benevolent Xi Jinping, would ever do such a thing. It's just too cruel. But remember, though, he's a freaking communist. These are communists that we're talking about here, all right? They don't even give a crap about their own people, much less these upstarts in Hong Kong. I mean, think about the communists. Think about how many they've killed over the decades or century or whatever it's been. Just between Mao and Stalin, they killed over, I think it was over 100 million people of their own people. Excuse me. So you think Xi cares about Hong Kong? Not really. They're just a public relations thorn in his side that he'd like to exterminate if he could. So if the disease can take care of the thorn instead of force by police or military or whatever from Xi, if the disease takes care of the whole city, all the better. It just spread. What are you going to do? And that's all I've got to say about China, coronavirus, and Xi Jinping. I'll be right back.
You're listening to The Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
Okie dokie, I am back. And it's on to the second segment, and last segment, same, entitled The Palestinians Can't Have Peace. And I mean can't have peace. Not that they don't want peace. They literally can't have peace with the Israelis. The fact is that over the past several decades, the Palestinians have rejected peace again and again and again and again, etc., etc., etc. And it's not a shock anymore to, frankly, anybody, in my opinion. Well, anybody with half a brain, that is. But yet we keep trying. However, this time around, there is something decidedly different about this whole scenario. This time, a bunch of their Muslim neighbors want peace too with Israel. They're actually siding with Israel, which is, frankly, insane. I just, it's as insane as saying that Xi Jinping is a benevolent leader. That's how insane it is. Who would ever thunk it? I certainly wouldn't have, not in a million freaking years. And as Rush has said many times in the past several weeks, isn't it interesting that these Middle Eastern Muslim countries have become more pro-Israel than the Democrat Party or the candidates running for president on the Democrat side? It is interesting, Rush, and it's absolutely true, too. Funny as crap. But when you allow virulent Jew haters like Omar Tlaib and AOC to drive the Democrat Party agenda, you got it. You let them. You let them in, okay? You let them have the power and authority, never thinking that it would get to this point. Duh. What would you expect is going to happen? Exactly this. Now y'all are stuck. But just think about that for a minute. Okay, let's all think on it for a second. Let it just sink into your brain if you could. Muslim nations are more in favor of Israel's existence than the Democrats are. It's like bizarre world, man. What the hell? Now, for decades, though, the conventional wisdom is that the conventional wisdom has been the correct wisdom in this particular case. Conventional wisdom is that the Palestinians receive their marching orders from these more influential Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, etc. And in fact, they have. Whatever they say went. That's what the Palestinians did. They were in lockstep with these other Muslim countries. But now, these other countries like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, a bunch of other ones are on board with President Trump's peace accord, yet the Palestinians have still rejected it out of hand. I wonder why. Gee. And it's this Palestinian, the Palestinian deal that Netanyahu and the Israelis are offering, and that Trump is offering, really, as the mediator or go-between, whatever. It's not a Palestinian sweetheart deal, but it's pretty close, as it grants something like triple the territory that they've been promised in the past, and still they wholly reject it. And gee, I wonder why. Well, basically because unlike the conventional wisdom, at least the wisdom of the past, the Palestinian terrorist leadership, and that's exactly what they are, they're a bunch of freaking terrorists, Abbas and the whole lot of them, takes its marching order not from the Saudis or the Egyptians or the Jordanians, but from, who else? Iran. They're the ones pulling the strings on the Palestinians now. And Iran's mission, its sole mission in life, it seems, is to drive Israel off the world map. Basically just to drive them into non-existence. So if Iran says no dice on the peace accords, then it's no dice on the peace accords, according to the Palestinians, because basically they're just puppets of Iran. But there's also another point to consider, and it goes all the way back to the days of Yasser Arafat's PLO leadership and whatever. Arafat was a terrorist. Always was, always had been, whatever. He was just a freaking terrorist. The PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, was a terrorist group. No better than Al-Qaeda. It just happened to have their own territory. Yeah, there you go. But Arafat was a terrorist. He wasn't a leader of men. He was a leader of terrorists. He wasn't a leader of a country. He was a leader of terrorists. And it's the only thing that he knew how to do. He knew, I'm sure he knew, that he couldn't govern an actual country. So he continually rejected one ridiculously generous offer after another from the Israelis. I mean, ridiculous what they tried to give this guy, and he just turned them down flat, and the same things happen over again. And the leader of the Palestinians, Abbas, is the same guy as Arafat. The fact is that if there were ever a lasting peace, it would then be all on him to govern. He's the president. It'd be all on him to govern. He could no longer blame all the Palestinian problems of poverty and no jobs and everything else on the evil Israeli devils. So, see what I mean by this? It's the same reason that pudgy pygmy Kim Jong-un threatens war all the time. We're going to blow you up. Oh, okay, fine, blow us up. If he could continue to blame the outside for all their problems, maybe the people won't discover that he has no idea how to govern or what the frick he's doing. And that's the same with Abbas. They don't want to govern. They don't know how to govern. They got into power through terrorism, and that's what they do. And Iran is pulling the strings because of Hamas and Hezbollah, and that's where they're getting their funds, and that's where they're getting their munitions and everything else. And that's my theory. So I had a couple of theories today. One was the coronavirus theory, why they wanted to house everybody in Hong Kong. Gee, what a shocker. I don't see another decent theory to latch on to, so I'm sticking with that one. And then Abbas and his rejection of the Palestinian-Israeli peace accord, the latest edition. So that's all I've got. My name is Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist. This has been the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Audio Podcast. I thank you all for listening. I wish you all the best for a pleasant balance of the weekend. And since the Patriots aren't in the Super Bowl, this is really tough for us to stomach up here, man. It's just weirdo central up here in New England. Go Niners. There you go. See ya.